All right, so we're going to talk about IMR. It was in the news, and some updates to IMR report. There was a annual report that was put out last week on IMR. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. In addition, we're going to talk about some back to school musings. Yep. So, yeah. So I want to thank our audience. Welcome to the news portion of the Ready, Set, Gemini podcast. I am your host, Dan Mora, and my co-host directly across from me.
Hey, everybody. It's Frank.
Thank you for joining us. As always, we love your feedback. Please comment in the comment section of the show. We're also looking for future show ideas. Please subscribe, like, follow, and comment. Frank, how you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Had a good weekend.
Yeah.
Got to spend some time with family. My mom's got a big old, above ground pool, but it's 40 feet long and 13 feet wide. So you can do laps in it and all that fun stuff.
Dang.
So family came over. We had a nice little barbecue.
Nice.
Enjoyed that. And then also went out hunting for some driftwood. Went to the Sacramento River and found a big piece that actually, Dan, I was going to ask if you can come help me get it the rest of the way up. I cannot move it. I moved it 50 yards, probably 125 pounds over all these rocks on the edge of a levee. And I started pulling it up the levee and I got it up 15, 20 feet. And then now it's your turn to help. So how about you?
What if I say no?
I'll just invite you to the river and be like, oh, come look at this piece of driftwood real quick.
I spent 4+ hours detailing my SUV, my Suburban.
Nice.
And that sucked. It just totally took it all out of me. It's not my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, they have places that'll do that for you.
Yeah, we usually have it done, but this car is several years old, and it needed some heavy TLC.
Yeah, better than what they got.
The products, went and bought all the products and all that, and about the cost of the products would be getting a half worked detail. So I hope it's worth it. I mean, it looks nice. It's a black car, so it's got fading on the hood that you can see. But
already,
I know it's 2016, so
clay bar.
That's what we did.
Did a clay bar, okay.
Didn't remove all the. It's just I think the fading of the paint. Just
wow, but you would think that the paint should last a little longer than that.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a bad time in the economy and they were cutting corners.
Is it Chevy or GMC?
It's Chevy.
Chevy, gotcha.
Yeah.
Next time, step
it up
to the GMC next time. You might get a little better paint quality. I don't know.
Right on.
Well, sounds like a fun weekend.
Yeah, I don't know. We did some other stuff.
All right.
It was a good weekend. It's a good family weekend.
That's good.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice.
I went car shopping with my daughter. That was kind of cool.
That's pretty fun.
She's 15, going to be 16 in November. So, she falls in love with it. She fell in love with the car. So we're maybe hooking that up.
Nice.
All right. Under budget.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. You fall in love with something that's under budget. It's safe. It's reliable.
My first car was a 1973 Volvo station wagon, 4-speed manual transmission.
So she fell in love with a couple. One of them was a 1974 Lincoln Continental.
Okay. Take her to the gas station.
It was gold orange.
Make her pay for it.
It was gold orange. And she just was enamored by it. I was like, I can't. I love that you love this car, but no.
Yeah, are you ready to do some work?
Yeah, I mean, it was overpriced, but
beautiful car.
subjectively beautiful. I didn't like it, but
no. Okay.
No.
I don't know.
Gold spokes on it.
Hey, it's a safe car. She could hit anything. That thing's a tank.
Yeah, for sure. It had less than 100,000 miles original. It's 50,000 miles original on it.
No way.
Yeah, so it's being sold for $20,000.
That doesn't mean that it won't break down and that Dan's going to be in the garage fixing it.
It was a no. It was a no for sure. It was Toyota, Honda. That's what we were focusing on.
That's a good call.
Toyota, Honda, Infiniti, Nissan. Yeah,
sure.
Them Japanese, they know how to build cars.
Oh yeah, I'm a Toyota lover for sure.
Mm-hmm. So we have IMR on the docket today. There was a Work Comp Central article out last week and updating or giving some feedback on how IMR has been working in the system. And it's curious. It's curious. The news has an angle. And let's just remind our audience, in 2012, Governor Brown signed SB 863, which established the IMR program in workers' compensation.
Last year, the 2021 report, they wrote, IMR continues to provide expedient, effective resolution of disputes over medical necessity for injured workers treated in the state of California workers' compensation system. Yeah, so how do you feel about that, Dan?
I think that's a nice, that's very complimentary, and I think a little false. It's false in the respect that effective resolution. I mean, we can look at we've pulled up a ton of information, and why don't you tell me what our research had told us about effective resolution of disputes over medical necessity.
Let me get there. First, let's communicate what this report has mentioned. Mm-hmm. It says, if the volume of independent medical review decision letters issued through the first half of 2022 hold for the rest of the year, determinations on medical disputed treatments in California's work comp system would fall for a fourth consecutive year.
Right. That's the headline of the Work Comp Central article, is that the determinations for disputed medical treatments are down for the fourth consecutive year. It also talks about the doctors, right? I'm pretty sure that it says talks about the fewer specialist doctors.
Yeah, there's less QMEs in the system now than there was last year and the year before.
That's incredibly interesting to me. That because this line of thinking for me says that if there's less doctors in the system, that decreases the quality, opportunity for quality of the reporting, and then to me would lead to more disputes. Yet you
would think. So Dr. Ray Meister is the gentleman who wrote this article, and in relation to the doctors, he says, what I would say on the other side of that, for instance, if someone needs an oncologist, that would be optimal, but all internal medicine doctors are trained in oncology, and some may be quite knowledgeable in that topic. Just because there isn't, for instance, an oncologist, there certainly would be an internist available who would have knowledge in that area. So I'm kind of curious into this suggestion that he's making out here. It's almost like he's making an argument that people still can get some level of treatment. He even goes on somewhere in here.
And I would say that's probably true.
I mean, yeah, but
some level of treatment.
Some level of treatment. There you go. But is that what's best for an injured worker? He made claims that, like, hey, these QMEs, that some are there, they're also like busy with other stuff. So they don't want to worry about the work comp stuff so much.
Right.
And so, from my understanding, this QME dance, there's 3 doctors, 2 get struck, 1 by the applicant, 1 by the defense. Whoever's left is what you get. And in some circumstances, there isn't even the ability for that panel QME to even be in place because there's not enough doctors.
Right.
I'm not sure how that impacts the injured worker, but I can imagine.
Well, it seems like that would go right to IMR, but those numbers are down.
Yeah, so he says some of the reasons why it is down is because of the formulary and non-formulary, mm-hmm. and then the MTUS schedule with, I guess, like pharmaceuticals maybe is like created some improvement. I don't have a lot of transparency on how those things did make a difference. Maybe there's better like agreement. Maybe it's a dollar amount. Like, hey, if it's a pharmaceutical and it's below $1, like just approve it. I mean, that's kind of a funny thing too. Like the money determines whether or not. I'm making assumptions here. I should just put that out. I don't really understand that process. Do you have much knowledge on that?
Well, so the the way that the pendulum has been swinging is towards a more formulaic approach to treatment. You have a torn meniscus, the MTUS. I don't know it. I don't know it specifically either, but the treatment formulary says these 3 medications are or should be available for a torn meniscus.
Interesting.
And so that has, from what I'm reading into it, has sped up the, or has reduced the number of challenges for medication, because I remember that being a massive problem. And in 2018, there was a medication formulary that was put forth to coincide with the MTUS.
Yeah, they're looking at these numbers at a high level. And if you go on to dir.ca.gov, there's a section in here that talks about the IMR updates, and they talk about the treatment requests and outcomes. And this was really interesting to me. So they have like categories and subcategories. So if you look at like diagnostic testing, if I say diagnostic testing, what does that mean? Like, hey, we need to figure something out.
Right.
Okay, so there's 27,278 decisions this year and out of those, only 8% were overturned. So this is like imaging, radiology, 8%, lab and pathology, 8%. I'm not sure what EMG, NCV, and NCS are. Those are getting overturned only at 7%. So just the request for like trying to understand what's going on is like 92% of the time, deny.
That's pretty. Yeah, that seems wacky.
So are the doctors? Are the doctors like? Do they just not know what to do for their patients, and somehow adjusters they can see the report and they say, "Oh, this is not right," and then it's almost like the adjusters are making the decisions on the medical treatment for injured workers
without diagnosis. I don't understand, and maybe we're missing something. Maybe that there is. Maybe these formularies are they skip the line from the diagnosis. That seems odd to me. If you need to determine if an MRI is going to determine whether there's a tear or a strain, shouldn't that be important for future treatment?
You would think. There's some other interesting numbers on here. So pharmaceuticals in general, still only 8% are being overturned. So 92% of the time, all the pharmaceutical requests, which is 40,083, 92% of the time denied. Even the NSAIDs, I believe that's like an anti-inflammatory, right? 17% of the time are actually being overturned. So it's way better than the normal. I mean, at least that makes sense. And then this was an interesting one too. Antidepressants, 29% of the time are actually being overturned. So they deny. So way better likelihood that those get taken care of than other things. And I wonder why. Like, obviously, if you try to say you can't have an antidepressant and then someone goes off, there's probably a lot of liability there. I'm making assumptions again here. Kind of thinking like, oh, what's the backdoor reason why this stuff is different than others, you know?
Right. And the negative effects that what goes through what goes through my mind is the negative effects of these objections and approval delays. And I know that there have been reports in the past, and there's definitely some stories that we've heard about treatment objections and denials that have led to like literal death of an injured worker. But I'm wondering how to quantify the cost for those denials that turn into an increased injury. You have, let me just keep using the knee, but you have a knee, it turns into a bilateral problem. It turns into a back problem. Where is that research? And I'm wondering if that's available. Your first, if you were, you're an injured worker, your first percentage of disability with one knee is 5%. I'm making that up, but it turns into bilateral and it turns into 20%. From bilateral turns into a back surgery, and now we're talking about an 80% or something worse. The cost there, so the intent of IMR was to reduce cost, and it has, I think, specifically, at least from everything that we're reading, that the cost has gone down. But if each injury is important, and we're trying to take care of people, think about that person's life that have gone from a knee injury to a back surgery.
Yeah. I had a story. I wish I remembered the attorney. Something along the lines of this guy needed a MRI to understand, like, is there going to be a surgery needed for his back? And for whatever the case was, I was told there was like a year delay before they could even get an MRI. And by the time they went in there, the guy had like continuously progressed his injury to the point where he had to get like multiple spines fused together. And the attorney had told me that if he would have got the MRI earlier, like he could have, had a way different outcome. Like he might not have had any spines fused.
Right.
But it's just the delay. I mean, even like you're talking the antidepressant, great, it's overturned 29% of the time. But if you're having a need for an antidepressant and you have to go through the IMR process, even if it can happen within, like, let's say 2 months, you're still 2 months without like medication that can, help you.
Yeah. We were just talking to our marketing manager, and she immediately is talking about a situation where her uncle has a fractured vertebrae.
Yeah.
And it has not gotten treatment.
Yeah, he's crawling around on the floor is what she had mentioned.
The quality of life, I mean, this is just, it's devastating to hear some of these stories. And it's been a minute since, we've solicited stories from attorneys about, these one-off cases where these folks are just, but this is a great call for our audience.
Definitely,
these stories need to be heard. And maybe I would love to do another show just to talk about some of these stories.
Just the stories alone would be very entertaining. Great for our people too. They're doing the daily grind. They need to understand, like, hey, we're here for the injured workers. That's what our work does.
That's what the system is supposed to do. And this whole bureaucratic layer, the bureaucratic layers, it's not working in all cases for sure. Maybe it's working from an aggregate perspective. But
you were mentioning, like, being close to the lobbyists and legislature with your role in the coalition. You mentioned you were hearing word that they're trying to like up the permanent disability.
Yeah, like in what we're talking about in these scenarios of increasing the quality of treatment, increasing the speed to treatment. When when applicants can't do that, or there's not enough of an effort to affect legislation in that way. Because that's very complicated to affect legislation in that way. IMR is a big deal. It's a big system. It has a lot of players. So to eliminate it, for example, is a massive undertaking for applicant advocates. So what I'm hearing and what I've heard is that there was effort earlier this year to get a reform package to the legislature, but that has been the likelihood has decreased over time. And I think that because there's a lot of larger issues that the legislature wants to deal with, that the governor wants to deal with, so they've said a work comp reform package is just not something we want to talk about this year. That's what I'm hearing. But even with the talk of a workers' compensation reform package, a legislative package, the injured worker advocates were focusing on permanent disability increases. again, as opposed to fixing the root cause of.
Yeah, it's like you're patching symptoms. Like, I mean, it's just like the diagnostics, like, hey, don't worry about that. You don't need to understand what's going on. Let's just treat whatever it says in a book. So it's almost like that's what this whole entire system is about, is like, how well of a writer are you?
That to me is the biggest, I think the biggest highlight for what IMR does. It rewards or it injured workers that can find the right law firm that and that law firm has preferred doctors because they know who to give which doctors write the best reports.
Right, the best reports. Not understand the injured worker's medical needs, but who then can also write properly. When I was in sales, this is like 3 years ago, I'd go to all these different chapter meetings, and that was like a recurring theme that doesn't matter what locale you were in. They would bring people in, they would talk about, how to prevent UR denial and how to prevent going to the IMR process. And it was simply about the documentation.
Writing better reports.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that too, the somewhat of an injustice, but both the doctors in this system are in a disadvantage. They have to basically understand the legalese and write a proper report. But also the applicant attorneys are at a disadvantage. They need to be able to identify whether a report is good or not. And or what language is important for a report, and it's a big burden. It's a big burden and probably unnecessary. Is it necessary? Is it fair? That's a subjective question. But to expect doctors in our system to understand the legal system and the attorneys to understand the medical system, it just keeps coming back to me that the complexity of this system is the problem. And there is a knee-jerk reaction if there's a problem to legislate it, to pour some cement around regulations and statutes to fix a problem, and not maybe allow people within the adjudication process and within the judicial process to use their common sense to figure this stuff out.
Yeah. So two things that come to mind here, like, is there an argument to say that the IMR system is working? And then just an immediate follow-up question to that, like, how are the applicant attorneys, like, feeling about this system? Like, I almost feel like, are they giving up in some way? I don't know. I'm not in the field, so.
Well, there might be a logical explanation, but the same question I have in that respect that okay, so determinations are down and doctors are down. That to me is signaling something weird. Maybe, and I don't know, are attorneys giving up? Are applicant attorneys giving up? I think, of course, not all of them. There's no way, of course, these guys and gals, they wake up and they need to wake up with, the fire in their belly, with fight, on their mind, because this is a fight. They're literally fighting for benefits and where an entire system is against them.
Yeah, I know Gemini, and I'm sure other copy services just as well, are doing a lot to try to support the tedious, like, paperwork that you gotta manage and getting the records and sending them over to Maximus and all of that. So I know there's a lot of attorneys that are working with us currently, but I do know there's attorneys out there that just don't want to participate in that process. If 8% is the likelihood of being overturned, how many things do they
92%.
Sorry, 8% is overturn rate.
Oh, God. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. But 92% saying, sorry, not getting it, and you did all the work, but results are going to stick. Mm-hmm. It definitely could be demoralizing.
Yeah, and I believe that there is a pendulum here of control. I mentioned, whenever there's a problem, there's a knee-jerk reaction for legislation and for regulatory change, and the influence within those bodies is completely one-sided at this point. The pendulum is very significantly on the insurance control side, and that's what gave us, some of these practices, these bureaucracies, these levels of and layers of bureaucracy that don't seem to be, there's some intended consequences, and then there's some very unintended consequences.
Sure. So I guess what is our ask? Like, what do we want our audience to like take away from this whole entire discussion?
Right. The 8%, the 8% that get overturned, it's better than zero.
Definitely.
And we're trying to, Gemini has tried to make this process a lot easier for our clients. And we have, that makes me happy. And I hope it gives hope, that's what we want to try to do, is give some hope. Don't give up. Don't give in. And I think the pendulum has to go the other way. There's got to be stories. There are stories. And I think, that's going to change things, create a environment and a force that puts things hopefully back to at least to the middle. That would be better.
Yeah, I mean, the middle's definitely better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's scary when you have these pendulums, the big swing, right?
Right.
They talk about, having these big swings is a form of power. Mm-hmm. Who's controlling all of that? Who's pulling the levers? What conspiracy theories can we bring up?
Yeah, I think it's
all interesting.
The voice of the injured worker, I believe, it's been a little lost, and that to me, there's a lot of, I'm not gonna point the finger on this podcast, but call me or something, and I'll tell you where I think that there's been some irresponsibility is probably the right way for me to frame that. People get tired too, and they just give up. And
I feel like it's a war on attrition, really, and it's been going on for so long. Like, it's almost like normalized. Mm-hmm. I think
there are some changes. The new Cal Labor Fed is a strong injured worker advocate.
Okay,
and that's exciting.
That's good.
Yeah, we'll see.
Let's do a call to action to our viewers and get them to throw up some stories. Like, what type of things were, if other people heard what was going on due to the negative way that IMR manages, injuries, and injured worker stories, like horror stories, really, right?
Yeah, that's what they used to call them at the Voters Injured at Work, was horror stories. Maybe it was CAW, I forget which one. Anyhow, next on our list is back to school. So how's back to school going for you and your family?
It's pretty chill. We do the shopping, so went out to the mall and spent way more hours than I wanted to spend there. Kids go crazy. We took them to like Target, we took them to JCPenney and a couple other places, but like, my oldest is 13 now, and she definitely has like particular styles that she's interested in. So she's like, oh, I have this much money to spend, and she just waits till she gets to the store she wants. So like, we should have just went there first. It would have been way better.
Yeah, in my house, it's my family is very check the box, and so it's more things to do to get prepared for school. There's just more things to do, and that causes a little bit of anxiety.
Sure.
So this time of year is not my favorite time of year.
The cheer is more intense for me. My girls are like fantastic in school. They get like straight A's, and so we've already got all of like the binders and the pencils, the pens, got new backpacks and all of that fun stuff in addition to the clothes. So I mean, it's kind of nice they're not at home, so get them out. And like, we're at work too, so
yeah.
So it's been pretty chill.
Yeah, like the extracurriculars pick up for you. For me, my kids don't really have extracurriculars.
We also got lucky this year, and we have, and this is probably a good segue, because what about people that aren't in my situation? So my wife's going to be driving the kids to school, and then we have a next door neighbor, kids go to the same school, going to be picking them up. So we just removed like half of the transportation needs, which is really beneficial. So what does that look like for someone that isn't in a situation like me? Maybe a single mom, single dad, got to manage all of this.
Worker.
Injured worker. Yeah.
Yeah.
What good question. How does that have to, I wouldn't want to deal with it. Kids would be late to school if I was like stuck having to worry about work and this and everything else. Like, you got to get a routine.
Yeah, it's quite a house of cards. Work injury can be completely devastating. The one thing we thought was interesting to tie this into, there's a couple pieces of news here, but there's a school in Malawi that the entire school is 3D printed. From the ground up in 15 hours. This is amazing. A concrete printer.
Yeah, I've been seeing these.
Pretty cool. I think I saw a video of this. I was like, whoa, that's amazing.
So I'm guessing the structural integrity of these things are tested. It's not going to like collapse on the kids. Is it like it must be like a dome type thing, right? They print it into a dome, and then maybe it's super strong.
The one I saw, it was just printing the walls.
Yeah, that's what I've always seen is the walls. Like how do they finish those things?
Yeah, traditional roof maybe. Sweet.
So what does that say to you?
We should build courthouses with 3D printers. That's what that says to me.
Okay.
Maybe housing, housing for less fortunate. I don't know. It's a cool thing. It's just cool. Like, how will this affect our lives, long term, to have this amazing technology?
Yeah. Homelessness and getting people back to work. Like, if you could solve that problem really quick, how would that change things?
Yeah.
Interesting.
The other thing that I think is interesting, I get asked this a lot, especially when I'm doing interviews for employees, is there seasons to our industry?
Yes, there is. 100%, like with plus or minus 5% variance, there is seasonality in workers' compensation, and it typically goes along with the school schedules.
Yeah, that's how I've explained it. It's pretty predictable to the school schedule for, I mean, law firms are businesses and they have employees, and those employees have children, and those children have most of the time, traditional school schedule. So what we see is usually it's light in the holiday seasons. It's usually light. I see at the very end of the school year, light at the very beginning of the school year. And then we have heavy months in between, basically, in between all of those kind of seasonal events. Usually October, we have a heavy.
It's like people are preparing, like, hey, just kind of I'm in the routine with school, and we got Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up. I need to do everything I can to like take care of my business now while I have time.
Right.
And you see a big spike, and then as soon as the holidays start to hit, winter, it's probably fair to say, the season itself, like being that it is winter, maybe less people are going into work. They're calling in sick more often, just with regular routine colds. And so they're less likely to get injured if they're not working.
Yeah.
A lot more sick time. And in the spring, we get a big spike too. March is another big time when everybody's like, all right, back to work. Let's start firing things up, spring cleaning. And then you get a lot more there too. That is interesting.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, not that I could think of. I mean, I know you guys went to was there a Latino comp baseball game you guys got to enjoy?
Yeah, Latino comp put on the day at the ballpark. So it was here in Oakland at the Oakland Coliseum. A's versus Giants.
It's a fun one.
It's a big deal up here in NorCal.
Yep.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a good time. Got to hang out with people I haven't seen in a while. And got to bring a few people that don't get to network or that often, and
Yeah, big shout out to Latino Comp for that. They're super active in the industry and definitely appreciated.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. All right, Frank. Well, that'll wrap up our discussion. Again, we love to hear from our audience. Subscribe, like, follow, comment, please. We're excited to hear your feedback.
Yes.
These topics are relevant and interesting, and we want to hear that. Frank, as always, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I want to just add, when you give us those comments, like give us some stories about those injured workers and navigating that IMR process specifically. I think if we got enough of those comments in, we could have another show.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. See you next time.